This is Mac OS Ken.
Recapping Apple's third quarter earnings. It is Friday, the 1st of August, 2025. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken. Brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macosken. Apple rolled into the third quarter fiscal year 2025 earnings call with a June quarter revenue record. According to the pre-call press release, the company posted quarterly revenue of $94 billion with a B dollars, up 10% year over year, and quarterly diluted earnings per share of $1.57, up 12% year over year. That beat the tar out of street expectations. Analysts on average had been looking for revenue of about $89.2 billion and earnings per share of $1.43. The press release had Apple CEO Tim Cook crediting double-digit growth in iPhone, Mac, and services, and growth around the world in every geographic segment. Even China? I pretend to hear you say. Yes, even China. Really, though, growth was spotted in all corners of the globe. On the call, Cook said the company saw June quarter revenue records in over 24 countries and regions. That includes Canada, India, Latin America, the Middle East, South Asia, the US, and Western Europe. Taking apart the segments, we start with iPhone. Revenue for Apple's communicator was $44.6 billion, up 13% from the same quarter a year ago. The device also set a June quarter record for upgraders, according to Cook. That was driven by the incredible popularity of the iPhone 16 line, according to the CEO. Way more popular than the iPhone 15 family a year earlier, it seems. Shoutouts to emerging markets, with Cook pointing to double-digit iPhone growth in Brazil, India, the Middle East, and South Asia. Plenty of love in the more established markets too, though. Apple CFO Kevin Perek said on the call that iPhone was a top-selling model in Australia, urban China, Japan, the UK, and the US. And once they've got them, people in the States keep loving them. 451 Research pegs customer satisfaction with iPhone in the US at 98%. Both the CEO and CFO say the Jesus Phone's active installed base hit an all-time high in total and in every geographic segment. And well, it might. Cook says last quarter Apple shipped its 3 billionth iPhone since the device's launch 18 years ago. Off now to the Mac, where Cook and Kev are also marking major growth. Cook and Kev. They should do a podcast. With names like those, they should do a podcast. Anyway, Apple's traditional computer line brought in revenue of $8 billion, up 15% versus the June quarter of 24. Like iPhone, the Mac also set a June quarter record for upgraders, and, like iPhone, CEO Cook had to shout out emerging markets, where the Mac saw double-digit growth on revenue, upgraders, and customers new to the platform. Upgraders actually set a June quarter record, according to CFO Perek. Growth was said to be everywhere, including double-digit growth in Europe, Greater China, and the rest of Asia Pacific. The installed base is bigger than it's ever been, and people are happy once they have them installed. U.S. customer satisfaction with the Mac is said to sit at 97%. If you're feeling a sinking feeling, it may be tied to iPad. Apple's tablet brought in revenue of $6.6 billion, down 8% versus the same quarter a year ago. It's probably not lack of popularity, but lack of newness. Last quarter had the difficulty of a tough compare from the year-ago quarter, which saw the release of a new iPad Air and a new iPad Pro. But the installed base reached another all-time high, according to CFO Perek, with over half the people buying an iPad coming to the platform new. And happy people they are. 451 Research puts U.S. customer satisfaction with iPad at 98%. Let us now address another dip in product revenue, running over the massive products in wearables, home, and accessories. Revenue for that category was $7.4 billion, down 9% versus the same quarter a year ago. CFO Parek says this segment suffered from the exact same thing the iPad did. No new iPads. Fewer new iPads meant fewer accessories, thus the slump in those numbers. Still, last quarter saw a June quarter record for upgraders to Apple Watch, according to CEO Cook. Over half the people buying an Apple Watch were buying their first one, leading to a new all-time high for the installed base. And satisfaction is high, 97% in the States, according to 451. Services continue to crush it. Yes, even with the anti-steering rules having been established here in the States, as well as under ongoing changes in the European Union. Services revenue for the June quarter was $27.4 billion, up 13% from the same quarter a year ago. That was not all the App Store, of course. CFO Parek said sequential acceleration was seen across a majority of categories, with special mention made of cloud services. The CFO also hit Apple's continued growth in the enterprise. Parek highlighted Mac adoption by such companies as PayPal and Roche contributing to the best June quarter ever for Mac in big business. Shoutouts as well to iPad adoption by Thailand's Siam Commercial Bank and Apple Vision Pro adoption by pilot training and simulation tech firm CAE. Perhaps trying to head off questions, CEO Cook took time near the end of his prepared remarks to address the elephant in the room. No, not the AI elephant, the tariff elephant. Referring to the situation around tariffs as evolving, Cook said Apple incurred approximately $800 million of tariff-related costs, which was $100 million less than expected. For the September quarter, said the CEO, assuming the current global tariff rates, policies, and applications do not change for the balance of the quarter, and no new tariffs are added, we estimate the impact to be about $1.1 billion to our costs. This estimate should not be used to make projections for future quarters, as there are many factors that could change, including tariff rates. Could change? Why? Looking to the near future, CFO Parek finished his prepared comments offering forward-looking information in color that should be applied in pencil, not done in Sharpie. According to that, Apple expects September quarter revenue to grow mid to high single digits versus the same quarter a year ago. They expect services revenue to grow at a year-over-year rate similar to what they reported yesterday. Gross margin should be between 46 and 47%. That does take into account the anticipated $1.1 billion tariff impact. And Apple expects operating expenses to be between $15.6 billion and $15.8 billion. Seriously, though, don't hold them to it. Parek said the numbers assume that the global tariff rates, policies, and application remain in effect as of yesterday's call. The global macroeconomic outlook does not worsen from yesterday, and the current revenue share agreement with Google continues. Oh, right, yet another elephant in the room. Let's jump into the Q&A, starting with a question about that. Cool that they'll say how much money they'll make if they get to keep making as much money as they're currently making, but B of A analyst Wamsi Mohan wanted to know if Apple would just conceptually talk about maybe options if the counter were to happen, if the payments were not allowed in the same way. Tim's response: I don't really want to speculate on the court ruling and how they would rule and what we would do as a consequence of it. Tim? More like Kurt, am I right? Mr. Mohan then served up a softball. With all of the focus on AI, some see a future less dependent on screens. What say you, CEO? Cook literally cannot see it. Games, photos, videos, Zeppo. It's difficult to see a world where iPhone's not living in it, said Cook. That doesn't mean we are not thinking about other things as well, but I think that the devices are likely to be complementary devices, not substitution. Goldman Sachs analyst Michael Eng had questions on hardware upgrades and CapEx. Specifically, what drove upgrades so hard last quarter, and what's the increased capital expenditure going to? On CapEx, it's a lot of stuff, though CFO Parek says a significant portion of it is tied to AI-related investments. On the upgrades, CEO Cook ties it to a few things. For the iPhone 16 line, it's just the device's popularity. For the Mac, he sees Apple Silicon as a major driver, and yeah, okay, some of it was tariff-driven buying. That is to say, some of it was people purchasing ahead of potential price increases. If I am reading his comment correctly, Cook seemed to indicate that about 1/10 of the increase was people buying because of discussions about tariffs. In case I am reading that incorrectly, though, let me give you the exact quote. In terms of, if you're wondering about pull forward, we would estimate the pull forward of demand into April specifically to be about 1 point of the 10 points in terms of people buying because of discussions about tariffs. Morgan Stanley analyst Eric Woodring wondered, China, what's up with that? CEO Cook acknowledged the part government subsidies played in some of Apple's 4% rise quarter on quarter in China. Not all of Apple's products are covered by those, though Cook said he does think that had some effect. Melius research analyst Ben Reitzes had questions about the more personal Siri Apple promised a year ago. What's Apple's confidence in launching it in the next year? Cook does expect that to release in the next year. Apple is growing its investment in that direction. They're also moving people around to focus on AI within the company. Another question from Mr. Reitzes. Revenue was up 10% last quarter. Apple's guiding for mid to high single digits growth for revenue this quarter versus the same quarter a year ago. Services are expected to grow 13% again, so why is overall revenue growth projected to slow? Yeah, remember that 1 point of the 10 points that was people buying because of discussions about tariffs? CFO Parek indicates that that's not expected this time, and there's your deceleration. Now that is not even close to everything covered on the call. If you want to hear more, there are a couple of ways to do so. First, there is a replay of the call on Apple's investor site, investor.apple.com. That'll be there for a couple of weeks. It's also up as a podcast to download and have forever. That should also be available for a couple of weeks, so grab it while you can. Finally, the site 6 Colors was quick with a transcript Thursday evening. It is a fantastic resource for parsing every word, and many thanks to them for providing it. You can expect plenty of reaction from Apple watchers, analysts, and investors in the call's wake. Expect to hear about that and other Apple news here next week. This week on the checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac, St. Paul, Minnesota is under cyberattack. At least its city government is. We'll talk about the havoc being wreaked there. Plus, Apple wants to fight phishing attempts in the Messages app, but a group of politicos wants to fight that fight. We'll tell you more on checklist number 434. Find it today at securemac.com/checklist or wherever you get podcasts. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can find me on Mastodon, macOS Ken at mastodon.social. You could also send me an email, info@macosken.com. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.